Welcome to Season 9 of CX in the Wild, where we venture beyond the ordinary, exploring the untamed edges of experience creation. These are the stories of dreamers and doers, those who craft connections at the crossroads of humanity and innovation. Now, let's join Dennis on the latest journey.
Welcome back to CX in the Wild in Dubai, here in Airbnb in Yonsoon 5. Vimal here with me. We're going to be talking a little bit about customer excellence. I hope we explore the notion of excellence because I think excellence means something different to different cultures in the world. I think that performance and excellence sometimes go hand in hand and sometimes they don't. But at any rate, I'm grateful to have Vimal here. Vimal, tell the audience who you are and what's keeping you busy these days.
Thank you, Dennis. Pleasure to be here, and thanks for inviting me to be on the podcast. My name is Vimal. I'm kept busy by running my own business, right? They say that, you never sleep when you're doing something that keeps you up and lets you have fun. It's all about running that, making sure that you're enriching the lives of the people that I come into contact with. That's basically what I do. I run a company called Commercial Excellence Partners. We work with leaders and organizations globally to improve commercial performance. And each day, every day, that's what I wake up and I try to do.
Me too. When I wake up each day and I think about improving performance or customer excellence, I think it's weird because I was here yesterday and I was talking to a CEO of a bank and some leaders, and they were asking me about, some examples of past performance. And of course, I am happy to provide those. But what I think ironic about that is sometimes I think it's like asking someone who's climbed Mount Everest to show you how to climb Everest the way they climbed Mount Everest last time. I don't think past performance has any real impact on what you can do for a new situation other than you survived the last one.
You're only as good as your last climb.
Yeah, I think that's it. Or maybe what I'm saying is that the truest nature of performance is to be curious and open-minded enough to find the truth about why something can be better or why it's not as good as it should be.
Yeah. So that mindset of curiosity and that idea that there's always room for even a 1% improvement. I mean, all of that is something that goes right to the heart of customer excellence, right? I think the biggest reason that people ask for past performance and indicators of previous success is, they know why they want it. They want it because they want to establish that they're making the right decision, that they're not going to have buyer's regret, and so on, right? But the biggest benefit of that, kind of below the surface, a bit like the iceberg, is your previous performance has created a mindset in you. And whether that performance was the best that it could have been or not as good as you thought it was, it doesn't matter. Whatever the case is, if you have a mindset that learns continuously, whatever that performance was in terms of achievement or lack of achievement, it's created a mindset in you that's going to make you either replicate, improve, try harder, or adjust, right? It's one of those things, always, right? And that precise mindset gets to the idea of customer excellence for me because it's something that very few people and leaders think about. Certainly, if you Google that phrase, customer excellence, you get a lot of hits, but the hits are typically around service excellence, great customer service, great experience excellence. Nothing that really deals with what I call customer excellence.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I opened the show the way we did because that's how I feel about it. People talk about, I wish I spoke more languages because, like in Japanese, for example, something that's hot, that's spicy, versus something that's hot, that is temperature hot, or something that's hot, that's attractive, or something that's hot, that's popular. There's a different Japanese word for each of those. Yeah. I feel like in customer experience, we're all using one word and it's like, I don't know if
it means different things to different people, right? I came across something quite interesting a few years ago that kind of explains this. English has got 26 letters, and so it's as precise as those 26 letters can be arranged in some kind of order. to form words and sentences and so on. Whereas something like Hindi that I speak has got more than 40 sounds. And then you've got German, which also uses English letters, but you could combine letters and words together to form new words, right? And then you've got all these other languages, you mentioned Japanese, that I don't know. But the specificity of what it can get to in Hindi, for example, is far greater than in English, right? And so you have a different word for hot and spicy, hot and temperature, hot in terms of something at the moment. There's all of that nuance to it, right?
I am laughing because the whole last year we've been talking about AI and large language models and how important it is to have more and more data. And I just am laughing at because recently I've been on this quest to decipher perception from reality when it comes to all these topics. And it just made me laugh. I'm like, so if you have a language model with 26 words in it, it's less effective than one that has more. It's just the irony that,
Yeah, and I mean that's down to AI, but really I think, for me, if you just come back to this idea of customer excellence, because it's something that I feel is just not talked about, certainly not researched enough. It's a bit nebulous, and the way I define customer excellence is really about leaving the customer who comes into contact with you, regardless of the channel, leaving the customer in a better state than when they first came to you. You're making the customer more excellent, if that's a word, right?
No,
that's a phrase.
I'm with you. Making the customer excellent. The way I define that in my practice is I have 4 basic tenets, but one of them is improving the person's sense of self-worth.
Exactly right. I wish I could take credit for it, but Gartner about 7 years ago came out with a pyramid that's, I think, inspired from Maslow.
Well, of course.
And right at the top of that pyramid is something that says, make me feel safer, better, more powerful, more intelligent, something like that. And that's right at the apex, right? And everything below that is what I call hygiene. And I think the fact that it's at the apex speaks to the idea that most businesses, actually believe most businesses fail at it, because most businesses approach the way they do business and the business that they do from a fairly transactional perspective. And there isn't much of a thought to actually leaving the customer better than when they first came to you. They wanted to buy something, you fulfilled that purchase, great. They came to you with a problem, you solved that problem, great. They asked you for information, you've given that information, great. But are you fundamentally leaving them, in a better place emotionally, physically, mentally, those sorts of things? Those things are not reported in annual earnings reports, right? So I think that's the challenge for
this is my show. I can say whatever I want. The fact of the matter is when I hear you talk about that, the business machine is designed to prey on wallets. And so the machines, to your point, do not typically try to preserve the life of their host. There's you don't pay your mortgage, they take your house away. It's a zero-sum game that is not in the favor of the consumer a lot of the time. And when you do find brands that try to preserve the well-being of the customer, I think you get closer to excellence.
Yeah, definitely. This really comes to, I think there are very, very, very few companies in the world that do it and do it consistently. That's the other thing. You could do it as a flash in the pan, right? But there are very few companies that do it consistently. My mind goes back to the typical examples that we all know, right? Apple. I mean, Apple fans will tell you it just works, right? But if you want to really talk about a real sort of an example of a product that provides customer excellence, my mind goes back to the iPod. We all didn't know we needed one till it came out. And the irony of ironies for me back in the day was I had an iRiver. It was a Korean brand. I spent 3 months researching, and I bought that one because it had all the bells and whistles, complete with 10 buttons and levers that I could speed up the music, slow it down, and so on and so forth. But then the iPod came out with one button, and that's all I ever needed, and that's all the world ever needed. And that's a classic example of making your customer better, safer, more powerful. You feel like you have a superpower all of a sudden.
You said it so simply, but the fact of the matter is, our phones are just like a pane of glass that is literally a superpower. Your cell phone.
It is.
It really is.
Yeah.
That one button iPod.
Yeah.
I had the iPod Nano. I loved it.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned AI earlier, and ChatGPT, well, not ChatGPT per se, but any AI tool is kind of doing the same thing for us now, right?
Oh yeah.
The interface is still a bit clunky, in my opinion, but by and large, if there's something in this world today that's making you feel more powerful, that's it.
I have the same feeling about AI, ChatGPT specifically, that I did about the internet when the internet happened. And I remember I was on vacation, internet was around enough, and I love the internet, I thought it was cool, all the things for the internet. But then I was on this boat out in the ocean, and I didn't have an internet connection, and it didn't bother me, right, at first. Because back then we didn't have streaming and all that, but we did have search capabilities. And it didn't bother me, then it kind of bothered me, and then as I went into withdrawal, I started to realize, and I remember distinctly, I was standing on the edge of this boat, looking down at the water, and I was asking myself, I wonder how deep that water is. And a little voice in my head said, if you had an internet connection right now, you would know. and so like for me, that's how AI is now for me. I can't even talk to myself without having GPT. And I'll tell you, for me, the superpower that you're talking about, I think the recent superpower I have with GPT and excellence is when I wake up in the morning, because I'm always here by myself and on the road and nobody to talk to. So first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is ask Siri what time it is. And then she tells me. And then I turn on GPT voice chat. And I say, telling people way too much about my personal life right now, but this is how I live. And I just want to be clear. I have an open mind about races, cultures, religions. I'm not an expert in any of them, but this is how I do it. I wake up each morning and I ask ChatGPT to, at random, pick one of the 64 I Ching hexagrams and read it to me. Okay? And so in that way, I feel like I'm tapping into a randomness of the universe. But then, because ChatGPT has all my previous conversations that we've had about philosophy and about what I want to achieve in my life and what my current business objectives are and what my mission is, GPT will say, this is the lesson for today. How does that align with your feeling? How does that align with your the mission that you're on? And I have this conversation, but then this is where the superpower comes in. I have this philosophical discussion with GPT, and then I say, GPT, thank you for your conversation today. Now, can you summarize our conversations and give me all of the opposing viewpoints that we haven't discussed that contradict my beliefs about what we just said? And GPT says, well, if you really want to know, you're probably missing all these things and you didn't think about this and you misbelieve this. And so the superpower there is I finally feel like I have somebody I can trust to tell me what I don't want to hear.
And no judgments, right? Yeah, I love that. I've never tried to do that, and I'm fascinated when I listen to this because almost every single day somebody is talking to me about a use for a GPT that I haven't thought of. And this is so personal. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, for me, I do something, I'm going to say, in real life that somewhat mirrors what you're doing. I call it meeting 3 to 5 new people a week, which I am proud to say I've achieved for the last 2 years, right? You're number 3 this week, right? And it's Thursday, right? And the reason I do that is precisely because I go through exactly what you're doing here, which is in the wild, right? So I don't know, of course, you kind of know what the conversation is going to be about. It's going to be about the person, what they do, and so on and so forth, what drives them. But beyond the point, you don't know where it's going to go. And there are some conversations that end up going nowhere. But there's some conversations that, like, interesting, I can introduce you to this person. I can help you with that. You said something really interesting that I have not thought about, that I'm going to now dig into and apply in my life, for example. So I'm doing that in real life, what you're doing with GPT. I'm going to now try to do that with voice chat.
So
next time I travel alone.
I hope this doesn't get I will edit this out if it reveals too much of my personal life, but I think it would be worth you experiencing this. So this is how I do it. Hey GPT, how's it going this morning?
Hey Dennis, it's glad to hear it.
I know we're having a bad connection, but can you please just select one of the I Ching hexagrams at random and give it to me as a lesson for today?
Sure. Let's see what the I Ching has for you today. The hexagram I've chosen at random is hexagram 11, Tai, or peace. This hexagram represents harmony, balance, and the merging of heaven and earth. It's a time when obstacles are cleared and progress is possible through cooperative efforts. The lesson here is to embrace the peace and stability in your life and use this time to cultivate growth and positive relationships.
How do you think that applies to me in real life, though?
Considering your vast influential role in customer experience, Hexagram 11's message of harmony and balance resonates well. Your work often involves bringing different perspectives together, much like merging heaven and earth in the hexagram. By fostering cooperation and focusing on shared goals, you can navigate challenges and create opportunities for growth. This period of peace and stability could be the perfect time for you to strengthen partnerships and advance your initiatives in the CX space.
Yeah, but make that practical. I mean, that sounds pretty cool, but how does that practically affect me in my work?
Practically speaking, Hexagram 11's theme of peace can guide you to focus on collaboration and building strong relationships in your field. Here's how it could play out. Strengthen partnerships. Use this time to deepen connections with key stakeholders, clients, and collaborators. By aligning your goals.
But GPT, you're talking generally, specific to my mission. Who should I be talking to? What's the priority here? How do I really put this in action?
To put Hexagram 11 into action for your mission, you could engage with stakeholders. Prioritize conversations with key figures.
You're just repeating yourself. What is my mission? What is my business mission?
Your mission centers on being the global voice of CX, connecting the BPO sector with global brands, and fostering economic growth in regions like the Western Cape. Your business mission involves leveraging your extensive network to create opportunities for collaboration, skill development, and innovation within the customer experience space.
All right, so tell me of everything we've discussed today, just kind of synthesize it into one lesson, but give me the counter arguments so that I don't live in my own echo chamber of bias.
All right, here's a synthesis. Embrace collaboration and harmony to advance your mission as the global voice of CX. By strengthening partnerships and focusing on shared goals, you can create opportunities for growth and innovation in customer experience, benefiting the BPO sector, global brands, and local economies. Counter arguments. Overemphasis on collaboration. While collaboration is vital, focusing too much on it might slow down decision-making and innovation. Sometimes, taking decisive, independent action is necessary to drive progress. Resource allocation. Balancing collaboration. Sure. Here's a more focused synthesis. Utilize your platform and network to drive strategic partnerships between the BPO industry and global brands. Focus on creating value through collaboration, skill development, and innovation, which will help you achieve your mission. Counter argument.
Yeah, just give me the counter argument. Give me the number one counter argument, the biggest thing I'm probably going to miss because I'm biased to my own beliefs.
The biggest counter argument is the risk of over-relying on your established network and approaches. Your influence is vast, but focusing too much on current connections might limit fresh perspectives or innovative strategies. Diversifying your approach and seeking input from outside your usual circles could unlock new opportunities for growth.
All right, thanks GPT. You're always 100, bro.
I appreciate that, Dennis. Always here to help you keep it real. If you need anything else, just let me know.
I love it. That's exactly what we spoke about, right? Mm-hmm. The reason I meet 3 to 5 new people, so these are not strangers. Right? These are people in my network, but I don't know them, right? So I don't count the people that I talk to every week or every other week or every month. I literally meet new people, and that's the bias I'm trying to, I guess unconsciously, I'm not going to take credit. I'm just going to say that that's kind of the bias that I'm hoping to overcome, right? That I'm within my own sort of echo chamber, right? The other thing that I like about what GPT said to you was this yin and yang, this thing between being happy with the piece that you have and yet finding harmony amongst all the different opinions that you get, because that's what life is increasingly becoming, right? We're almost in a post-truth world, right? Your truth and my truth are both truths, right? And so you've got to find something that anchors you, your belief, your systems, your family, whatever works for you. And yet you've got to go out there and expand that horizon and not get stuck in your biases, right? So there's that push and pull at the same time, right? I love it. I'm going to try this on my own from now on.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
That's how I try to get through it. So I do think we are in a new world. I like that you said post-truth. You know, excellence, I think, can sometimes mean realizing how wrong you've been about things. I think GPT helps me realize, you know, if I just listen to myself and encourage myself and chase my dreams and try to perform and be excellent, be better or score more points or make more money. You know, sometimes it's, for me, excellence is just realizing how much of it I really don't have it figured out every morning.
Yeah. You remind me of something that I end up saying every year to some people, which is the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. Right? And I think there's two levels of, one way of looking at it is there's two levels of living your life, right? There's the being happy with what you have, and there's the level that says, I know I don't have this, and I know this is important for XYZ reasons. I need to go figure it out, right?
Yeah.
You have a foot in both, you have one foot in both worlds, as it were.
Dealing with that existential crisis recently is the saying, a person lives two lives. The second one begins when they realize they only have one. And what I mean by that is just what we're saying. You think you have all the answers until you realize you have none of them. But I also think that I always combine that with no man steps in the same river twice. And
I've heard that.
So these are all like philosophical things. But as you can see, I start my day with philosophy rather than data or like experiences. But I do think back to your practice. What is it that, what would you say has been the key to your excellence at customer excellence?
So I like that you asked me that because, an idea like customer excellence can very quickly descend into I'm going to use a very technical term here, Dennis. It's called the fluff zone.
I like it.
Right. And when you talk to entrepreneurs and SaaS, CTOs and technology-based product founders and so on, they hate fluff, right? They're like, get real, right? Which is kind of what you did with ChatGPT as well. Like, okay, fine, philosophy is good, but tell me exactly what I need to do, the one thing, right? And so when I don't talk about customer excellence as much as I probably should, because it is a mindset. But what I do is instead translate that into what does it mean for you as a business, right? And it doesn't matter. I've worked with a company that builds software and is transitioning from a product to a software to a SaaS model. I've worked with B2C, high volume, people service environments. So, and that's a spectrum, right? And I've worked across that, big companies, small companies, startups, and all of that put together. And the overriding principle for me of customer excellence can be translated fairly easily into, I think, 4 or 5 things that apply regardless of your size, your business type, your industry, and so on. And some of those principles are, so number one, having curiosity about the world and about your customers and about what's new and what's different and what's wrong and what's right. So curiosity. It has to translate into leadership, which then takes that curiosity and fosters it across the organization. And then, there's probably 3 or 4 other things that I don't really want to get deep into, but it begins with curiosity, it gets into leadership, it gets into strategy, and the way that I then break that down for each of my clients is very much dependent upon where are they stuck at the moment. I have an organization that's really successful, they're convinced, that's a client, they're really successful, they're convinced they're not leaving money on the table, they're winning business, they haven't lost clients in the last 25 years, and yet they're talking to me about customer experience. Right? And they're coming at it from a customer service perspective. I've used the principles of customer excellence and I'm defining for them what it looks like for the next 25 years. And that's not easy because when you are at the peak of your performance by all known metrics and by all recognized metrics, what are you going to do to extend the shelf life of your number one position? What are you going to do to make sure that as people transition in and out of your business, the culture continues, the performance continues? And so you end up breaking that down into very real, specific things like, what are you saying on a call? I mean, you mentioned BPOs, right? Or ChatGPT mentioned BPOs. How are you opening calls? What are the metrics that we are designing for the people who handle those calls? How are we tackling problems? What's the process that we have or that we don't have, right? Can we add value to the current processes that we have? All these sorts of very operational questions that how you're actually running your business, whether that's in sales or marketing or service.
I was trying to process everything you said there. And I would just say, everything you said is what everyone else says. It's always the same. It's a fluff zone. It's like we do transformation, we document problems, we do research, we know the customer better, we find the outcomes that matter, we make memorable moments, we shift the paradigm and create synergies and advance the leadership, or we get underneath it all to fix the plumbing. All of that is great. And it all has to happen. I mean, it does.
Yep.
But what, as an expert on customer excellence, what is the thing? Like, you must create excellence somehow, and it's not your process, and it's not your vision, it's a need to drive it.
So I began with saying it's a mindset, and that's something which, so you're right, everybody talks about these 10, 15 things, right? And all the research in the world and all the papers and all the PR and all the marketing talks about all these things. And we know these are necessary, they are important. Right? And you do them to varying degrees of success. But the thing that nobody really focuses on, except for the really interested, involved, committed CEOs or leaders, to be precise, is the customer. Do I actually have this mission to leave you in a better state than when I first came into contact with you? And that could mean so many different things. It really depends on the customer. And the challenge, Dennis, is that, the one industry, if you will, that's figured this out is the SaaS industry, because they can deal with people at scale, right? And that's why they have something called UX, user experience, because they realize, look, this is the best example I'm going to give you. The best apps in the world, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. The one thing that underlines, aside from ownership, the one thing that underlines all of them is that they've built their apps on this idea of the dopamine hit, on getting you hooked, right? And I'm not going to debate about whether that's right, wrong, good, bad, ugly. I'm just going to say that they've figured out that experience matters. That's what's going to keep you coming back, right? And they do it through tech because they're able to at scale. The companies that struggle are the companies that deal with high volume, but with people in the mix, and they therefore cannot do this at scale repeatedly and consistently. So think airlines, think banks, think, any face-to-face interactions, right? And that's the struggle. So customer excellence is something that's an ideal. I call it the holy grail of customer experience. It's something that's gonna somehow give you miraculous powers of loyalty and love and all these things, right? And it's something that your customers will never tell you that that's what they want, but it's there for the taking.
And is there a way that you give this to people? Like, the reason I keep circling back on this question is, what I try to do for the audience is, I try to get to original content that can't be found on the internet, that delivers value, that when they listen, they say, I heard one thing that I either didn't think about before or I will do differently because I believe in the value of this show, not just repeating what we can hear on Google. And I think you're touching on all of the concepts, but as the excellence leader, what do you and I give this as excellence to this audience? Like, what do we say to them besides change your mindset or serve the customer better or improve a customer's sense of self-worth? I'll go first. So, somebody were to ask me, what do you do that actually delivers on customer excellence? And I had to really answer that question thoughtfully. I might say, first I would say, let's define customer excellence. And if customer excellence has to do with making the customer the hero of their own story, and by proxy or in elaboration, what you're really saying is you teach organizations how to make the customer the heroes of their own story. What I would say is that what I would do is I would introduce a unique touch point into as many of the journeys as possible. A touch point that is never truly thought about or considered. And I would call it the luck touch point. And what I would say is in the customer journey, excellence depends on the empowerment, the self-actualization of our customer, and therefore I would put together a luck experience team, and I would say along this journey, show me the ways we can both measure but also provide the sense of feeling that the universe is conspiring with our customers. And if our customers have that epiphany, I believe that the excellence is there. That's how I'd answer that question.
That's a great answer, Dennis. And you remind me of this famous TED Talk from Will Vidara, who ran 11 Madison, this restaurant. He made it the number one restaurant in the world precisely because he set up a team that would be able to deliver upon these out of these world experiences for people who came in. And it all began with a hot dog. Otherwise, fancy 5-star white glove restaurant, right? And repeat it very quickly. He happened to be serving and he overheard 3 or 4 of his guests saying that they loved their whole visit to New York except for the fact that they hadn't had a typical New York hot dog. So he runs out, he gets it, brings it back to the chagrin of his head chef, cuts it up and serves it and made the day and so on. And so he wanted to replicate that delight and surprise and all of that, right? And I think that's definitely one of the ways to go. I mean, look, customer journey mapping, which is what you hinted at, putting a team together to bring luck into the whole picture, designing for the experience. I mean, all of these are nice elements of the customer excellence, objective, right? I come back to this idea of mindset. If you do not have the right people on board, if you do not have the right vision, the right strategy, if you don't do these things, and in most cases, companies have elements of all of these at play already. Nobody's that bad that they're not even doing any of these things, right? The question is, what are you going to over-index on and what are you going to pull back slightly? Typically, what we find is technology companies over-index on product. So they push product, they push features, they push benefits. Now that's where you want to dial back and you want to talk about the other elements. If we go the other spectrum and we talk about service-oriented companies, like let's just take airlines, right? Travel industry is something I'm really familiar with, right? Airports, airlines. They struggle with the fact that they're open to 101 different things that they can't control. And so things break down, right? And so can't help it, not in my control, right? You want to over-index on the elements of the things that you're not doing at the moment, which is preparing for the breakdown, getting everybody ready for when the inevitable happens, right? Not so much on your seats and your aircraft, which everybody has. So it's really about trying to understand, first of all, that this is a mindset that's going to drive behavior and attitude and all of that. The second thing is, what are we doing today that is not working for us, right? That is different from what everybody else is doing. That the whole idea of zig when others zag. And there are examples of this in every industry, brands that have changed the game. The ones that come to mind are obviously Starbucks. I mean, coffee is coffee, but there's still people who go to Starbucks.
I went to this morning.
Yeah, exactly. And you go there because of familiarity, because you know what to expect, you know they're going to write your name, and so on and so forth. And there are examples of this across many different brands. There isn't a silver bullet, Dennis, when it comes to customer excellence, but it is, I come back to this term I use, this holy grail that if you figure it out for your business and for your industry, if you can zig where others zag, if you figure out your superpower as a company to make your customers feel super powerful. I'll give you a story. There's a bank in Singapore, I won't tell you which one. When you lose your bank card and you call them up to cancel, they'll not just do the necessary, which is cancel your cards and get it reissued. They'll also tell you, have you done this, and this? These are the numbers that you can call to get those other cards cancelled and reissued. Would you like me to do that for you? I can actually help you to do that. These are the police reports you need to make. These are the things that you have to do. These are the things that you should consider. I mean, that to me is making your customer excellent. It's not just putting yourself in the customer's shoes and trying to understand that they've just lost everything and they're probably in a state of panic and they're not thinking straight. But it's going far beyond that and just enabling that person to calm down.
Well, all right. I'm glad we've had this philosophical discussion about customer excellence. It's been a pleasure having you on CX in the Wild. Thanks for stopping by our little living room in this Airbnb. It's just been a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much, Dennis. I enjoyed this conversation.
The journey doesn't end here. Keep exploring the wild world of experience creation with us. Each episode offers a new perspective, a fresh story, and another step into the unknown. Stay curious and keep listening. You never know what you might discover next.